So in all national cancer registry data, these two places were recorded, systematically. But normally the other cases are ignored. Ignored means there are not much data available for public to assess in the literature or even in the government bodies, even among government bodies. So one can see that according to this World Health Organization, so the mortality rate is very high for breast and cervical uterine cancer, as well as lip and oral cavity cancer among Indians. Though other cancer cases, other areas, though other regions are also, the mortality rate is high for other, organs in our body. But these three organs or parts are major hits of cancer when India is considered. So in 2020, a report from National Cancer Registry in India has published a results, published their analysis report in Global Oncology Journal. It was found that among the cases studied recorded in India, again the recent studies also shows that about 1 million people are all struggling from these different cancers, which 5 leading sites, which are breast, lung, mouth, cervix, uterine, and tongue. So this mouth, lung, and tongue cancer are mainly due to pollution as well as smoking, tobacco smoking. So in this case, and these are the main cancers which are predominant in males that I was saying in the last slide. So you can see that in order to prevent such cancer hits, or in order to analyze, or in order to prevent a patient suffering from cancer, in order to decrease the mortality rate of cancer in India, we have to really look into the screening aspect, and if possible, early detection in India. So technologies must be developed to do screening of cancer in India, as well as, if possible, to detect as early as possible in order to provide proper treatment to the patients. So I would like to tell you what is the role of a chemist, and what is the importance of research in interfaces of various disciplines, especially to contribute, cancer, to contribute reduction in a cancer mortality rate in India. So from our side, like chemists, we have to contribute in developing, protocols to do early cancer screening, early cancer detection, and the treatment is also again depending upon the different drugs available. There are a lot of techniques also available, but for a country like India, we have to really look into early cancer screening as well as detection, and diagnosis is the main criteria that when we think about the population of India. So in early cancer diagnosis, there are several steps involved. Say, for example, biopsy is one easy way. Like, if you go to a hospital and if the doctor suspects that you have a cancer in a particular site, what the doctor do is that they will collect some samples from the area which is infected, and then they will do a cell culture, and they will identify using different processes whether these cells are cancerous or not. And if it is cancerous, then they will proceed into the next level. So you need a biopsy needle, or you need a invasive techniques to take these biopsy samples out to do this cell culture and all. In the other case, the next step is to look at cancer biomarkers from body fluids like blood. You take blood and you count RBC, WBC cells, and then you check different expression levels of proteins. You could also check whether different tumor cells, clusters are there in blood or not. In this way, also you can do, cancer diagnosis in an early way. So the next step is to do cancer imaging. So in general, in cancer diagnosis and all, in clinics, people use, doctors recommend CT imaging, MRI imaging, and nowadays optical imaging is also coming up. So researchers are going on using optical images to trace cancerous sites, especially by using, and if possible, to use a non-invasive approach. So our research is also mainly focusing on assisting or developing various approaches for optical imaging of cancer. And I will also discuss some aspects of our experiments with computer tomography imaging as well in the later slides. So am I audible? Is that everything okay?
Yes. Oh. Yes, audible, sir.
Okay, thank you. So so these are the several approaches that clinically recommended. Say, for example, once we develop a molecular imaging probe or a molecular imaging or optical imaging tool, there will be a preclinical experiment. Like as chemists, we could able to develop some molecules in the lab, and then we have to do some preclinical experiments. Say, for example, we have to do in vitro studies in biological cells, cancer cells, where we are focusing on, and after that we have to go into animal models. For animal models, usually we take mouse models, and then in an advanced stage we can also think about pigs, monkeys, etc. But if a drug or a molecule that is developed in our lab, which will be found useful for some type of particular type of cancerous growth, for example, to image this tumors, to identify as a contrast agent to monitor tumor growth, then we have to establish these several protocols and steps in mice models before translating into clinical trials. So in clinical trials, nowadays commonly using techniques for imaging and the early diagnosis are computer tomography, positron emission tomography, MRI, ultrasound, etc. So these type of techniques are commercially available in clinical practice. So in our research, what we are trying to, how the progress of developing a molecular imaging probe will be depending on different stages. First, once we prepare these molecules in the lab, or chemical approaches developing some particular organic or inorganic material in the lab, once it is ready, we will analyze the biochemical aspects of these molecules. For example, I have a molecule with me, and then what I will do is that I have a doubt that, okay, this molecule can be used to cure cervical cancer, or this molecule can use to image cervical cancer cells selectively. Then what I have to establish first is to establish the in vitro biocompatibility processes, in vitro performance of this probe. So for that, we have to do biochemical processes, including imaging in cell cultures, imaging and check the biocompatibility of the probe, check the permeability of the probe for this type of particular cells, check the performance of the cells selective to this cancer cells. That means it should not do any harm to the normal cells which is available in the body. So once that is done, then we have to select and identify corresponding molecular targets. And once that process is done, we have to also develop we have to select which which imaging modality is going to be used to diagnose it. And what, say for example, if I have to, if I am looking only at the optical imaging aspects of this, imaging aspects of cancer, then we have to reverse synthesize or retro synthesize and modify these structures capable of doing optical imaging. So that is also applicable to PET, MRI, or any other imaging modality. So first, then again, we have to look into, we have to start from the beginning. We have to also look into the biochemical process after modifying it at this level. So chemistry and chemical aspects, from organic synthesis to optical imaging, it's always there as a side part. And when it comes to imaging modality, chemists usually develop probes which can be used as contrast agents for analyzing a particular disease or sites. So once that is done, then we can extend its study to other in vitro tests, and then finally up to small molecules. So from our side, we were doing experiments. So we are continuing doing experiments up to small animal models. We have not yet done any further studies, and we could not able to. I mean, we are in the process of translating these molecular probes from our preliminary studies to clinical samples. So I'll be mainly discussing about some of the aspects of developing these organic, inorganic hybrid materials for passing through all these preliminary steps and reaching up to small animal models. So let me go to the next slide. In this, I would like to tell you some of the research interests from our team. We are mainly looking at developing functional organic materials for bioimaging and biosensing. We are also involved in developing nanohybrid materials for multimode imaging, multimode imaging of cancer using multiphoton photoacoustic techniques. I'll be discussing some aspects of multiphoton and some detailed aspects of photoacoustic techniques that we use in imaging. We would also like to, we are also involved in developing, molecules that will selectively selectively sense small molecules in our body. Say, for example, we are developing plasmonic materials which could able to develop lactate from blood. So this type of experiments are also going on. So in this particular, in this talk, I will be mainly focusing on explaining our efforts in developing functional materials that can be used as contrast agents or imaging agents for near-infrared, multiphoton, photoacoustics, and combination of different modes together for which will be helpful for developing optical probes for future cancer imaging. I would also like to discuss some aspects of our soft organic hybrids, then how we use it for X-ray computed tomography. And I will also show you some preliminary results of how we do this cancer targeting using microchips. I hope this will be interesting for you all guys. So by this, I will move to my first session where I will be discussing about near-infrared, how we utilize near-infrared fluorescence for imaging. So for this, what we did is, for example, we prepared one hybrid material. This hybrid material is made up of three things. One is a mesoporous nanoparticle, which we call as mesoporous silica nanoparticle. So these nanoparticles are very small pores, and where you can load drugs, you can load different type of dyes, you can do a lot of things with this mesoporous silica nanoparticles. So what we did here is that we had a special type of dye which was insoluble in aqueous conditions. So this dye undergoes severe aggregation when it is in contact with water or any biological solutions. So at the same time, this dye has very interesting optical properties in the near infrared region. So it was a challenge to use these type of dyes for fluorescence imaging in biological samples. So we addressed that issue, how we could able to use this dye as a potential imaging agent for NIR imaging. So when we think about that, we thought of making a hybrid material. Instead of doing any modification on this dye, what we did is that we took this dye and we load this dye inside the mesopores of mesoporous silica. So it must be noted that the pores of mesoporous silica are highly hydrophobic. So what happens is that the dye goes inside the pores, and dye is hydrophobic, and dye goes inside the pores and save inside the mesoporous silica. So what happens? This forms a hybrid where the dye is now inside the probe, inside the mesoporous silica. So there is again a chance for to leak the dye out from the mesopores. In order to prevent this leaking of dye from this mesopores, what we did is that we did a coating of graphene oxide. Graphene oxide is an graphene oxide as such is a 2D material, which is an ultra thin layer of carbon. So what we did is that we did a coating of graphene oxide on the surface of mesoporous silica nanoparticle, and we created a new hybrid material where here you can see that the dye is inside the mesopores, and then after that we covered this mesopores with graphene oxide, and we get the final hybrid. So it is very interesting that this dye shows excellent fluorescence corresponding to the the fluorescence of the dye in organic solvents. So what happens is that when the dye goes inside, dye has the mesopore has a hydrophobic cavity, and the dye is inside the hydrophobic cavity of these mesopores, and it shows all its optical properties once after wrapping with graphene oxide in aqueous conditions. So that was very interesting. So let's see some of the characterization details. Here are the mesoporous silica nanoparticles that we had before modification. Here is what happened when you wrap it with the graphene oxide. So you can hope you can see an ultra thin layer of graphene oxide on this mesoporous silica. And then what we did is that we load this mesoporous silica with the dye. And from this image, it is very clear that the pores of this mesoporous silica is now disappeared. That is mainly because of the loading of organic molecules inside the pores. So this is the final hybrid that we had, which shows excellent fluorescence corresponding to the dye which is already loaded inside this mesopores. So what we did next is that we had investigated several aspects. We were checking about the property of the dye, and we found that the dye is now completely preserved its optical properties inside the mesoporous silica, even though it is coated with a graphene oxide, ultra thin graphene oxide layer. So normally when you take this dye, and if you have a solution which is highly nucleophilic, say for example, if you have some phosphates, or if you have a highly basic solution, dye undergoes bleaching. But say for example, if you take PBS buffer at 7.4, and if you put the dye in PBS buffer, and the moment itself the dye will undergo aggregation, and it also undergoes bleaching of its optical properties. But what happens here is that since the dye is loaded inside this mesoporous silica and coated with graphene oxide, such sort of self-quenching or bleaching is not occurring in this particular hybrid material. So we have demonstrated that this mesoporous silica, dye-loaded mesoporous silica coated with graphene oxide, can be used as an imaging agent for cancer cells. In this particular case, we were using HeLa cancer cells, which is actually cervical cancer cells. So this is one interesting example of how we could able to make nano hybrid materials by combining properties of different materials, nanomaterial, organic molecules, and then 2D materials together to make a hybrid. Then we can use it for a particular imaging aspects, especially connected to cancer image. Now that is one aspect that I was trying to tell you. This is an example of how we utilize different materials together. But you look at another aspect of how we utilize optical probes for 3-photon imaging at 1300 nanometer. This is also an interesting piece of work where we had this organic molecule. This organic molecule is a very simple organic molecule which is designed based on donor acceptor donor design strategy, and we had attached a folic acid side group. Folic acid is known to have selectivity to folate positive cell lines. So it was surprising to us that this particular organic fluorophore has excellent 3-photon absorption properties, and even if it is absorbing, it shows an excellent 3-photon excited emission. So which means we could able to develop an organic molecule which can be excited at 1300 nanometer, but it shows an emission around 520 nanometer. So this is very interesting. So what we did is that we allow these molecules to form aggregates in water, and we got a few nanometer sized organic aggregates. And these organic aggregates were also found to be 3-photon active. So these nano hybrid materials we characterize is using a transmission electron microscope, where you can see the formation of spherical aggregates of about 120 nanometer in size. So this organic aggregate was formed because of this aromatic core. Aromatic core is hydrophobic. This folic acid is hydrophilic. So these molecules self-assemble together to form organic hybrid molecule, which is now which can be seen in the TEM as spherical nano aggregates. And these nano aggregates were showing excellent multi-photon properties, and we were able to identify its multi-photon property at 1300 nanometer. Here is how we did the experiment. You have this cuvette, and we have the solution in water, and solution of these aggregates in water, and you shine 1300 nanometer laser. This is an near infrared laser, so I mean the infrared laser, so we cannot see it with our eyes, but when it passes through these molecules, because of the multi-photon property, the solution starts fluorescing in the green region. So this is how we monitor, and we studied it in a lot of different type of experiments. And because of this folic acid, we were able to use this one for selective accumulation in folate positive cancer cell lines such as HeLa cells. So this is an interesting aspect of developing targeting optical probes for multi-photon imaging. So multi-photon imaging is a very it's a new optical imaging approach which may find potential application in the near future for optical imaging of different cancer types. So then these were the experiments that we were carrying out in vitro mode. That means we stopped these studies in the in vitro level, and we were trying to communicate to the people that communicating to the scientific community that we have these organic molecules, we have these hybrid materials, and we could able to demonstrate its application in vitro. At the same time, when we were carrying out all this type of experiments, there were a lot of questions coming out from the other referees, reviewers, and other scientific people who were all actively interested in translating this type of technology to clinical practice. So their main concern was, how will you utilize this type of molecules for in vivo imaging? So that was a big challenge for us. So to address in vivo imaging, so that means if you want to do imaging in the in vivo samples, original mice or even human body, we have to have we have to think about some properties of light, which we will be discussing in the next slide. So here you can see there are when you think about biological imaging of tissues using optical imaging mode, the light undergoes two different properties called diffraction and diffusion. So probably you may know that when you shine white light in a torch light in your hand, on your hand, on the other side you can see an illuminated red illumination of the hand. I hope you guys once did this experiment, this type of observation in your life. Do you have any such? Do you have any such experience in the past? Hello. Hello. Yeah.
Hello.
Do you have any such of experience of shining a light into your hand and see an illuminated light from the other side?
No.
Yeah, probably we will do this type of experiments while we were in our childhood time. But this type that is a property of light which undergoes a scattering inside the tissues. So when you shine light on your body, it undergoes intense diffusion or scattering. And if you have some targets in your body, say for example, if I have some growth inside my hand, and if I am using a torch, an optical light, optical source to see the tumor, it is hardly impossible. It is impossible for me to see this tissue because of the diffusion of light inside the tissue cells. So we have to avoid a diffusion of light when we think about biological tissue imaging. So for that, the answer is we have to use photoacoustic imaging. And I will tell you what are the how we can do diffusive illumination in optical imaging. For example, if you are targeting a growth inside your body, consider these are tissues, and you shine light, and you will never see the original target because of the diffusion of light. But you can even think about a surgery of one part of this. This is an imaginary. This should be an imaginary, approach. Like you just do a surgery of one side and then shine light from the other side and see it. So that is the another way that we can do. The third way is that you can use an optical translucent agent, like another chemical, which you should inject into the area and make the tissue transparent so that light can pass through and you can clearly localize where is the target. But the another practically feasible and more accurate method is to develop an approach where you shine light and the target starts developing sound. And if you could able to monitor the sound using proper transducers, then you can monitor and then you can capture an image with higher resolution, and also you can see how the depth of this target area. So by making use of light and sound, a combination of light and sound, we could able to use this technique for both identifying the target as well as preparing higher resolution images for future further diagnosis. So our role is, so as chemists, what is our role? So our role is to develop some contrast agents so that these contrast agents will absorb more light in the area of interest, and that thereby it will generate more sound, and then we could able to hear the sound using a transducer. So this approach is called photoacoustic approach. So that is what we are going to develop we are going to follow for in vivo biological imaging aspects. So here are some of the, when we take the light absorption of your tissue, you can see that it has a dip around, the light has maximum absorption around this 400, and the tissue has maximum absorption around 400 and 400 to 700 nanometer, but it is the tissue penetration is more at 650 nanometer to 2.5 micrometer. So this range, that means from the from near 600 nanometer of our visible spectrum to almost around 2.5 micrometers, that window is ideal for NIR light imaging. So we had our main idea was to develop organic probes or materials or hybrids which could be useful to image in this particular range of spectrum. So this can be done in different ways. This can be done either individually or by making hybrids, as I was mentioning previously, like combining different properties of different materials together to make a single hybrid, which could be applicable in this particular optical window. So we have done similar several efforts, and I will show you some of the some of the interesting outcomes from this type of experiments. So here are our approaches. We were discussing about, we were developing soft organic materials for photoacoustic imaging. We have also carried out studies in developing photoacoustic fluorescence bimodal approach to do in vivo animal experiments. We had developed another approach of developing nanomaterial, upconversion nanomaterial, and cyclodextrin complex for photoacoustic imaging. We were also involved in combining multi-photon photoacoustic imaging techniques to develop a bimodal imaging approach. So we had experiments with different type of combined multimodal imaging aspects. So I will be discussing on one aspect of our studies about using the same type of dyes inside a mice cell. So here is what how we did this near infrared fluorescence photoacoustic bimodal imaging experiments for deep tissue imaging. So in these experiments, we could able to address the issue of diffusion of light in tissues by monitoring the sound, as well as developing contrast agents, which could able to use in this 650 to 2.5 micrometer optical window. So here is what some of the basic principles of photoacoustic imaging. Say for example, this is an animal model, and here is one tumor site, and we are going to image this tumor site inside the brain of this mice. So what is happening is that we will take our organic probe and we inject our organic probe into the mice models, and it will accumulate. Assume that it will accumulate in the tumor site or the target area. So what we do is that we shine nanosecond pulse laser into it, and pulse laser will once you shine pulse laser, because of the contrast agent already accumulated in the tumor site, it will absorb light and generate a heat, and that heat will generate emission of ultrasonic sound because of the pressure difference in the area of incidence. And then what we do is that we monitor the emitted ultrasonic emission by making use of a transducer array. So we will create a lot of transducers around the brain area of interest, and then you detect the ultrasonic sound that come out from this in this model. So this is how photoacoustic imaging works. Now I will show you how we will do scanning of photoacoustic using a photoacoustic microscope. Here is what it is happening. So assume that you have a target here, and you shine light on it, and then the light diffuses in and it will be absorbed by the target, and then the ultrasonic sound will be generated, and you can see that at the same time there will be signals coming out from this the area of interest, because you have the corresponding contrast agents inside. So this can be done. And then if you move this transducer along this dimension, in this direction, you can scan the entire area. And if you do that scanning, then you will get an image like this. So this is how photoacoustic imaging can be done. So with the help of acoustic excitation and monitoring using ultrasound, you could able to simultaneously monitor depth as well as high resolution sections of tissues. So to enhance this contrast, we have to develop certain molecules which should be useful to absorb more light depending on the excitation source. Say for example, if you have an excitation source at 530 nanometer, and you have to develop a molecule or a hybrid which has maximum absorptivity. So if you have a molecule or a hybrid which has maximum absorption at that wavelength, the contrast of the image generated by this photoacoustic imaging will be much higher, and you can easily diagnose the target without any problem. So now let me show you what we did with our probes. We had a molecule, and this molecule has an excellent optical properties in the near infrared range, and we mix it with pluronic F127 micelle, which is a FDA approved micelle, by just simply mixing this dye and FDA in dichloromethane PBS buffer for 24 hours. So this experiment is actually a very simple experiment. You take this dye, mix it with the pluronic F127 in dichloromethane, and you add PBS on it. So once you add that and you stir it, dichloromethane will evaporate over time, over 24 hours. And then what you will get is a solution which contains all these micelles. So what we did next is that by doing this type of encapsulation inside the micelles, we were able to prevent dye aggregation, because once the micelle is formed, the dye will be encapsulated inside the hydrophobic pocket of this micelle. And since the FDA, the pluronic F127 is a biocompatible FDA approved micelle, the toxicity of the new hybrid material is also low. Since it has glycol side chains, then the cell uptake or permeability of these type of hybrids will be very high. So what we did is that we then carry out this fluorescence and photoacoustic bimodal imaging at 840 nanometer. Why this 840 nanometer? This 840 nanometer corresponds to the absorption of this particular dye, and I will show you in the next slide. So here is how it works. So we have this micelle loaded with our dye. You can see this high resolution transmission electron microscope image with a bilayer of this micelle corresponding to the formation of a micelle with dye inside. The contrast difference here with the black shade and bilayer shade indicates that the dye is inside the pores, inside the micelle form. And you can see this size distribution. So we carried out this using DLS, and you can see that the average size of this nanohybrid material is 100 nanometer. Here are the optical properties of this molecule. You can see that the hybrid shows an excellent absorption around 800 nanometer, with a very nice, very intense emission around, again, 840 nanometer. So we could able to utilize the emission, absorption and emission property of the dye for photoacoustic and fluorescence imaging. See, look at this absorption spectrum at 840 nanometer, and this absorption spectrum, we have to remember that we have to have a source which excites the sample at 840 nanometer. Then only this dye will absorb maximum light, and then it will generate photoacoustic signal. Similarly, you have to have a source which could able to which could able to sense or detect a camera which could able to detect emission at 840 nanometer. So these two things are important when you try to combine two different optical imaging modes. Say for example, if you want to combine photoacoustics and fluorescence NIR imaging, the wavelength of excitation should match with the interest. I mean the techniques that we are using. Say for example, if you have a wavelength 680 nanometer and your probe is at 840 absorbing at 840 nanometer, you cannot use it. You have to have a probe which should show photoacoustic emission absorption at 840, and it should also show emission around 840 nanometers. So then you can able to combine these images to get high resolution images for any sort of diagnosis. So here is what our experiments with animals, and we could able to find that we could able to monitor this dye within 10 minutes of 10 to 15 minutes of injection, and it was found that all the dye accumulated in the liver region, which is evident from this image. We did a open surgery of this mice, and we took this internal samples, and we also carried out this in vivo fluorescence imaging, and we found that the dye is accumulated in the liver region of this mice. So what we did next is that we carry out this photoacoustic imaging again at 840 nanometer. Here you can see one movie corresponding to the photoacoustic imaging of mice before injection of the dye. I hope you can see it. Here is how it looks like. So different sections combined, and you can see this pre-injected mice samples. And once you inject the mice with our dye sample, you can see the photoacoustic imaging, which indicates the formation of accumulation of dye in the liver region of the mice. So here are some of the data that we got. When you summarize all these things, you could able to conclude that we were able to successfully develop a nano hybrid material, or a sort of a nano material which could be useful for photoacoustic as well as fluorescence imaging at 800 to 900 nanometer, both in the case of photoacoustic as well as fluorescence emission, NIR emission imaging. So this is our these are our experiments with optical imaging probes for multimode, NIR fluorescence as well as photoacoustic combined bimodal imaging approach. Now let me tell you another interesting aspect of developing a supramolecular assembly-based aggregate for X-ray computed tomography imaging. So this is also another interesting aspect of our studies, where we were able to contribute hybrid nanomaterials that can be could be useful as potential imaging agents for X-ray CT imaging. So in this experiment, what we did is that we have created an aggregate by making use of organic chemistry and self-assembly, supramolecular chemistry approach. And then what we did is that we had a few gold nanoparticles which were adsorbed or which were assembled on the surface of this supramolecular assembly. In this particular case, we could able to do a covalent binding of gold nanoparticles on the surface of this aggregate. And once the aggregate is formed, we covered this aggregate with the polyethylene glycol to get a final hybrid which is biocompatible and safe. So this is the transmission electron microscope image of our hybrid material. You can see the organic stuff, and on the surface of it, gold nanoparticles were assembled together to form a final hybrid, which I will show you how we prepared it. And here are the time-dependent assembly process of this organic-inorganic hybrid, where you have this organic assembly, and then we allowed gold nanoparticles, and then these are corresponding TEM snapshots at different time intervals. And you can see that in the final, after 12 hours, the assembly was complete. You will get a hybrid material with a soft aggregate, soft organic aggregate, and on the top, gold nanoparticles assembled together to form a final hybrid. So what we did next was, because you have gold nanoparticles on the surface, we can use this as an X-ray contrast agent, because gold nanoparticles has high radio density, and by loading this gold nanoparticles on single organic aggregates, you can increase the contrast of the material. For example, instead of when you use gold nanoparticles for imaging, the contrast developed, and when you use this hybrid, the contrast developed. When you compare both, the contrast developed for the hybrid will be much higher than that of a single nanoparticles. So what we did next is that we carried out how we can use this nano hybrid materials for imaging in animal models, which we induce cancer in them. So before going into the details of in vivo models, we carried out some in vitro studies, and we compared the performance of this new hybrid with iohexol, which is a commercially available X-ray CT agent, and you can see that our hybrid shows high contrast when compared to the iohexol already available in clinical practice. So here are the X-ray CT image contrast changes for both iohexol as well as our hybrid material. So what we did next is that we had 41 tumor bearing mice models. So you can see here are the sites. Say for example, if you take this mice model, here is the area where they have this cancer, induced cancer. And then what we did is we injected our standard iohexol into it, and we analyzed these mice models after 6 hours and 24 hours. And you can see that the contrast is almost like, the iohexol undergoes metabolism, and it will it will go out through the urine from the body of the mice models. So the accumulation of this type of purely organic contrast agents in the tumor sites for a continuous evaluation, it's almost impossible. So we have to again inject iohexol when the time of X-ray CT imaging. So in our case, with the hybrid material, we again carried out the same type of experiment, and we can see that after 24 hours, the hybrid material was still there in the tumor sites, which is an interesting observation, that the material is accumulating only in the tumor sites. And it was found that these mice models were highly healthy after the imaging process, and even after accumulation of our hybrid materials into the tumor sites. So you can see some of the results. As I said earlier, the hybrid material, the soft organic hybrid material, was mainly focusing in the tumor area and not in any other healthy cells. And we assume that this type of accumulation of this hybrid is mainly due to the EPR effect, which is otherwise called enhanced permeation and retention effect, which is quite normal for these type of particles or hybrid materials in the size range of say for example 50 to 200 nanometers. So this is another interesting approach on how to utilize organic self-assembly, supramolecular chemistry approaches, and extend it for a practical application such as imaging cancer, tumor sites in vivo model samples. So by this, I will move to my last session where I will be discussing on how we carried out some imaging, selective cancer imaging in microfluidic chips. I hope you guys can clearly hear me, and if you have any doubts, please feel free to ask me.
Yes, we can hear.
Okay. So by this, let me go to the next last section where we have this targeted bioimaging of cancer. We have this different aspects. So as I mentioned previously, there are some cancer subtypes where there are folate overexpression is there. Say for example, we have this cervical cancer as well as breast cancer cells overexpress folate receptors. So if you have folate vectors or folate targeting molecules, then you can have an idea about whether the cells are cancerous or not. So that is the approach that we follow. We develop an organic activation of an organic dye by making use of folic acid derivative. So we attached a folic acid derivative to a dye, and which starts emitting in the near infrared region. We start emitting in the visible region. So you can see that when you add this nucleophile containing folic acid, modified folic acid derivative to a dye, the dye starts emitting in the visible region at around 500 nanometers. So the dye has a very nice emission around 500 nanometer, and the dye also has folic acid. So it is possible for making use of this dye for selectively targeting folate positive cancer cells. So for this, what we did is that we had a few set of microchips. I think you can see this. This is a type of a coin. This is a coin, one Singapore dollar, and you have the chip. This is so small that it will be of the size of our 1 rupee coin. And you can see that this microchip has 3 different chambers: chamber 1, chamber 2, and chamber 3. And if you have a close look at it, you can also see there are some sort of bridges here. And these bridges are nothing but water which was loaded inside the chamber 1 and 3. So the water will act, because of the surface tension of water, the water will act as a gate in between these two pillars and block anything to come inside or anything to go out. So this is an interesting property of fluids in these micro chambers, especially water. Because it has a high surface tension. So here you can see how we did the experiment. So when we put a dye or a molecule or whatever in water in the second chamber, what will happen is that the surface tension of the gate matches with the liquid in the chamber 2. So that will lead to the opening up of that chamber, and then that will eventually lead to the distribution of whatever there in the chamber 2 into all these chambers. So this is what is going to be shown in this movie, where you can see that when you have a solution of water, a solution of dye in water in the chamber number 2, it slowly comes in, and it will, when it is in contact with the gate of chamber 1 and 3, so it starts opening, and that will result in the distribution of the same in the chamber number 1 and 3. So this is the particular design aspect of the study. So what we can do with our dye, so we, instead of taking this food color, we can take our dye and we can put this dye inside in the chamber number 2, and we can culture different type of cells in chamber number 1 and chamber number 3. So since this dye is very selective to folate positive cells, the dye will move and accumulate only in those cells contain folate receptors. So that is the principle of this experiment. So now let me tell you how we did this. As I said, we have 3 chambers. And next what we did is that we cultured one type of cell in chamber number 1 and another type of cell in chamber number 2, chamber number 3. And then what we did, we injected this dye with folate vectors in the middle chamber, and this chamber, and allow it to incubate in the incubate in both these cells. And it can be seen that only folate receptors will receive this dye and accumulate in those type of cells. So thus we can distinguish between a folate expressing cell line and a folate non-expressing cell line using this microchip and the dye 2T, which we have already, which I was showing in the last slide. So in this case, what we did next is that we had some experiments with different cell lines. For example, breast cancer cell lines and breast epithelial cells, and then normal endothelial cells. So what we did is that we had 3 different types of cells. One is folate overexpressing, one is folate less expressive, one has no folate receptors. So we took the combination of these 3 cells, and then we carried out the studies and look at how the dye is performing, whether the dye could be able to distinguish overexpression of folate, and whether can we use this approach for early cancer diagnosis. So here is what our results looks like. You can see that this is MCF7 cell lines, which I said previously, it has less overexpression of folate receptors. But MD-MB231 cells has a higher overexpression of folate 231 cells, and within 10 minutes of incubation, the dye could be able to selectively accumulate on MD-MB231 cell lines, which is actually folate overexpressed, which is actually expressing folate receptors in excess. So here is what it looks like if you take a session, and you can see that you have this MB231 cells where the folate receptors are overexpressing, shows great green fluorescence, enhanced green fluorescence when compared to the other derivative, other cell lines, which is MCF7 cell lines, which has lower folate receptors. So then what we did is that we also carry out some sort of 3D cancer spheroid cultures by making use of our microwells, and we cultured cell lines containing folates overexpressing and other cells together, and we were these are some of the microscopic images of these microwells where we have cultures consisting of different types of cell lines, and we carry out we have also evaluated whether this probe can be used for selectively identifying probes from a 3D cell culture. So so this is our result. Yeah, so these are our results. You can see that the 3D culture of MD231 cells has more, green emission corresponding to the overexpression of folate receptors, and for the other case, MCF7 cell lines shows lower expression of folate receptors, and which is evident from the incubation of dye 2T into this probe. So this is actually our continuous and constant effort since 2008 to develop these class of dyes for selective, for bringing this type of unrepresented class of dyes, which could be mainly useful for otherwise useful for solar imaging, solar cells and all. But now we were trying to make use of these dyes for bioimaging by making use of different approaches. So this is how the latest update is, and we could able to use these dyes for different applications, including NIR imaging, NIR photoacoustic imaging, multiphoton imaging, and now in the latest study we were also able to develop this dye for selective imaging of cancer in microchips. So by this I would like to conclude my session. And in addition to all these things, we were also involved in developing some small molecule sensing plasmonic devices, where we have several different aspects of developing metamaterials, hyperbolic metamaterials, and microfluidic combined imaging techniques, which is actually a collaboration of a lot of people all around the world. And we were able to use these type of plasmonic materials for sensing biorelevant small molecules. And I would also like to extend this type of studies in early cancer diagnosis from biofluids like blood samples or sweat samples from patients. So the studies are ongoing. Probably we will be coming out with more interesting results in the near future. So in conclusion, I don't want to give a conclusive statement for this type of continuous research at this moment. So the questions that we questions which are in front of us are like, can we translate this multimodal imaging approach in original clinical practice? So what are the challenges that we need to address? We have to look at the biocompatibility, the cost effectiveness, the ease of equipmentation, all sort of things has to be addressed. And we are also looking at, can we use this soft organic hybrid for remote control drug delivery or some sort of things like that. And also, is it possible to develop this microfluidic chip for rapid and sensitive cancer detection? And I hope I could able to deliver. I could able to convey you the message how chemistry graduates can contribute to fundamental biomedical research, especially in the interfaces. I hope you get an idea about the importance of chemists in the interfaces, interface research in the interfaces. By this, I would also like to show you a couple of examples of my students, my colleagues. Why I'm saying this, because these people are having a background of engineering. For example, Dr. Shreyans Jain is an BTech mechanical engineering student. He did his BTech from QSAT in Kochi. And he published a paper in Nature Physics, where they were mainly focusing on cell migration. You can see how cells are migrating in these microfluidic chambers. So this is one sort of interaction of a mechanical engineering guy in biology. So this is interesting. Like I would like to say that his concepts and all are in mechanical engineering. But once the moment you are involved in an interdisciplinary team, you can able to do a lot of interesting aspects. So another guy is like Dr. Rijil. He is a person, a graduate in BTech in electronics and communication from NIT Calicut. And interestingly, his PhD is in using gold silica nanostructures and how light and matter interacts. So this is what I was trying to tell you. So there is no limit, or there is no separate barrier between subjects like physics, chemistry, biology. No. Nowadays, research is interdisciplinary, and people have to come together and sit together and find a solution for a common problem. So that is what I would like to show you with these couple of examples of students that I was interacting with. So by this, I would like to also summarize some facts. Like it would be always better to do an screening and early detection of cancer as far as India is concerned than the late treatment at the late stages, or even treatment in the stage 3 or stage 4. So these are the things that I have to tell you. And also I would like to thank my supervisors, my collaborators and students. And also I would like to thank NUS and NTU for generous funding for all these projects. And finally, I would also like to thank Professor Sabu Thomas sir for you know, accommodating me these days. So I am associating with him as well. So thank you very much for your kind attention. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for giving us detailed information on the research works related to biomolecular imaging and detection of cancer. It was really interesting to note how chemistry contributes to optical imaging. Now the session is open for discussion. If any questions, participants, please unmute yourself and ask.
Dr. Sejit, why it is called a soft organic? Why
Oh
the
yeah.
terms?
Soft organic is actually a fancy name. You know, when you think about this type of aggregates, like supramolecular aggregates. So these aggregates are actually not a rigid aggregate, solid aggregate. It will actually, you know, disintegrate gradually, even if it forms aggregates. And for example, in our nano hybrid materials, we use electrostatic interactions. Even though electrostatic interaction is very high, very strong, but in our human body, these type of materials undergo disintegration somehow. So at the early stages of preparing all these aggregate, we often refer it as soft organic materials.
I think there is something special about this mesoporous silica.
Yes.
We use this.
Yeah.
What's the peculiarity? What's the benefits of that?
So that's a good question. Like mesoporous silica is, you know, the pore size of this one is around 3 to 5 nanometer. And that varies. Even it goes up to 10 nanometer, 15 nanometer, depending upon the preparation. So this mesoporous silica nanoparticles has a high surface area because the pores allow you to load a lot of things inside, and the pores are hydrophobic. So when you look at different aspects, for example, imaging, you can drug delivery, you can load these pores with drug molecules. You can load, say for example, curcumin. Curcumin is otherwise insoluble in water, but you can load this one inside the mesopores of this silica material, and you can integrate this one or inject this one in you know, biological solutions, so biological fluids. So that can make this curcumin more active. It has all these photophysical properties inside these mesopores. So another interesting thing is that you can prepare mesoporous gold hybrids for catalysis. So you can load these pores with different type of substrates. So because of the higher surface area, each nanoparticle will be more active when compared to the other you know, individual particles. So that is the importance of this mesoporous substrates. Yes.
It's acting as the carrier molecule actually.
In our case, it's a carrier molecule. For example, in catalysis, this will be an active surface with a lot of you know, active sites. It can be an active, you know, very active substrate. With small amount of material, you can do magic. Performance will be much higher when compared to you know, simple drop casting or loading or whatever.
I think we can apply this material in many devices. Yeah.
Many
things.
devices. Yes, exactly. So we did an experiment of oxidation of phenol by making use of mesoporous silica sheets. You could able to prepare mesoporous silica sheet. So that we call periodic mesoporous silica. So we can load both sides. Like that, you prepare a sandwich, and that material shows wonderful performance for simple oxidation reactions, simple catalytic reactions. You can do a lot of things.
do you know about the preparation of that? Yeah, is simple or
Yeah, we can do. It's not that simple. I mean, it's not very complicated. It's very simple. You just take surfactant, silica sol gel method. Hope you know all those things.
Okay. 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 Thank you.
If no more questions, let me continue. May I again invite Dr. Srijit Shivrama Panikar for the valedictory address.
Okay. Thank you very much for giving this wonderful opportunity. I would like to thank the organizing committee first, especially Professor Sigala, for giving me this opportunity to interact with this huge, gathering of students as well as colleagues. And when you think about chemists, you categorize people like, okay, chemistry, you know this much. But I think it's time to break that thoughts. Like, we chemists can do a lot of things. I hope I could able to deliver these aspects in front of you. So I would like to thank all. I'm really glad that I could share these details in this interdisciplinary research and knowledge that we have acquired during our research in the last several years. And I also hope that this will trigger people to think beyond boundaries and motivates the students to interact and in the interfaces of biology and physics and engineering. So I'm sure you might have enjoyed all the previous sections, and hope this 3-day seminar organized by this Sri Shankara College Kaladi would help you guys to answer some of the important questions that now the current society is facing, and probably this will also help to generate a connection between people from different parts of India, since it's a national seminar. And finally, I would like to also thank you all for this wonderful webinar session. Hope you all enjoyed this. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. May I now invite Dr. Girish Krishnan to propose vote of thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Jasida. Hope I'm audible now. Right?
Yes.
Okay. Before I get into the formal vote of thanks of the entire program, let me say a few words about the session just concluded now. It was a wonderful session we had just now. I know Srijit personally, and it's a pleasant reunion for me as well after several years. And I'm happy that the participants could just listen what's a wonderful international scientist and how the science in international era works. Of course, it's a very state-of-the-art topics. Many of the things covered, and for me to learn a lot of new things I learned, especially the photoacoustics, how you combine photons and ultrasounds. You can study structure and many other things and a lot of other techniques. The modern techniques also he introduced. And this is a testimonial for the students how you break the barriers of disciplines. Once you graduate from your institutions, the entire science is open to you, and this is indeed a true testimonial for how you can cross over the disciplines and contribute. Also, I have to say that this much immense knowledge is accumulated not just in one day. It's over the years of hard work and rigorous work and passion for the science. You can see that he started working around 2008 to even for a decade. He worked and accumulated so much of knowledge in science, and it helps immensely to to develop new medicines and other techniques for a practical use like a cancer treatment and other things. Also, I am very pleased to see that Dr. Stages started with really a social message how we have to control the pandemic COVID, and we all know that the scientists actually contribute. Scientists must be very yes, scientists have very high social commitment, and I'm very proud to see that Sage is contributing. Started with message and even ended with message how you have to help the society to control the cancer cells, and it is really a wonderful 2 hours, I must say, in all aspects. Maybe the scientific parts may be very new and maybe very high level for our young participants, but it should be an eye-opening that we have a long way to travel once you graduate from your institutions, and truly take the inspirations from this kind of research work, and you work being a chemist background, work together with engineering and even the clinical work. And from the first year, the graduates learn a statement from the textbook that chemistry is the central science. Now you have really witnessed how chemistry stands as a central science. So I hope the participants really take this message from the Sage's lecture and think beyond the chemistry and think about contributing in high quality research in the future career. I really thank for Sages for coming to this session and addressing our young talent students and participants. And again, we hope to see you more and listen you more.
Thank you.
Yeah. With that, let me move into my task and a formal vote of thanks to our this webinar series. It was a wonderful 3 days, I must say that. Of course, offline seminar would have been much more interesting and much more engaging. However, in the current situation, I'm happy that we could manage well the various topics. Like we started with our distinguished guest from Chennai, and he's also an eminent scientist. He delivered he spoke about organic chemistry research, how the real pure synthesis is taking place, and then we had a computational chemistry. We moved to computational chemistry, very engaging lecture and very interesting lecture. As part of later, then we moved to really a career orientation to the students. And Dr. Anil Kumar, actually, I'm very happy that he could give a lot of ideas about the career development for the students. Then we had Dr. Sandhan Lakshmi talk about polymer science, especially from the marine-based stuff. And today morning, students must have really enjoyed some basics evolution of chemistry by Dr. Sujit. He's in a very simple way. He introduced how the science is developed over the centuries or even millenniums, and also he just introduced some latest research taking place. It's a good learning curve for the students. And now we have this Dr. Sage's wonderful lecture. Overall, I'm very happy that we could conduct a successful seminar series, which must be very useful for the young, talented students and researchers and participants from inside and outside our institutions. And with that note, let me express my sincere thanks to certain personalities here. As we know, already mentioned, the program is supported by a smart scheme from by the management. So let me express my deep sense of gratitude on behalf of the department, its organizing committee. Let me express my thanks to our honorable, the team behind this SMART, Honorable Managing Director, Sri K. Anand sir, our Chief Operations Officer, Sri Professor Jayashankar sir, our very beloved Principal, Dr. A. Suresh sir, and the IQAC Coordinator, Dr. Predi Nair, and her team. This team is behind this SMART scheme who organizes this type of conferences among the departments, and which is very helpful to bring such personalities to introduce to our students. Then, on behalf of the organizing committee, let me thank all our invited speakers. Let me from Dr. Fatehveer Singh, Dr. A.B., Dr. Anil Kumar, and Dr. Sandhana Lakshmi, Dr. Sujit, and Dr. Srijit, who spend their valuable time to spend with us and guiding, I must say this, but guiding our participants through this, as these 6 sessions. So on behalf of the committee, let me express my deep sense of gratitude to all the speakers who attended, uh, who uh, who honored our webinar series. Now let me express my sincere thanks to all the participants of this seminar, especially those people or those participants who are from our outside of our institutions. And I'm very happy to meet you all, and also there's also giving their valuable feedback for us to improve for the further improvement. And on behalf of the team, let me express my thanks to all the participants who are registered outside our college. Now, let me express my thanks to all our beloved students, actually, who are the backbone on everything of our department, who took attend very keenly all these sessions and being all kind of support for us. So, on behalf of the committee, all the students are with love. We all express our thanks. Now, of course, just for a formality, let me express my sincere thanks to our convener, Dr. Shekhara, who took initiative to conduct this and took all the pain to bring the speakers. And just for a formality, let me express my thanks and our thanks to Shekhara teacher. Also, now let me express our sincere thanks to our head of the department, Srimati Manjula Krishnan, for giving us all support and help for this conducting this program. Now, let me again express my thanks to my dear colleagues, all the teachers, Shailija teacher, Emma teacher, Sina, Timya, and my co-convener Jessica, and our new teachers Santhya and Jida, and all our research students in the department. I hope I have mentioned everyone in this now. And once again, before I conclude, let me express our department's thanks to all the participants and speakers once again. And with that, I conclude my words. Thank you all.